These two little scallies avoided jail after attacking another woman in a bar in Manchester. Leslie Herbert and Jessica Winstanley jumped another woman and glassed her in the face in a city centre bar in Manchester. The victim, who now works as a teacher, suffered a broken nose, and she was forced to remain off work after McDonald's worker Leslie Herbert launched the glass at her. The motive for the attack was because the victim, when she was a student, had previously worked at the Boots store at Manchester Airport with Jessica Winstanley, and that the pair had a working relationship but didn't regard themselves as friends. Boots have a policy that staff cannot date workers at the same branch, and whilst they were working together, the victim told a manager that Jessica Winstanley was dating a colleague, and as a result, she was moved to another branch. The victim later apologised to Jessica, and she thought the matter had been resolved. A night out for Boots staff was arranged, and a number of staff, former staff and their friends, attended, including the victim, Jessica Winstanley, and her chavvy friend Leslie Herbert, who had never worked for the firm and had never met the victim before. They began the night at a Wetherspoons in Manchester city centre, and whilst there, Leslie Herbert went out of her way to barge into the victim and another member of her group. Leslie Herbert continued the argument, shouting and swearing at her after they moved to another bar in the city centre. A few moments later, Jessica Winstanley, who had taken her shoes off earlier in the night, grabbed hold of the victim and dragged her to the floor before kicking her repeatedly in the face. Leslie Herbert, who was wearing sandals, also aimed a kick at her whilst she was on the ground. She got to her feet and learned that the two chavs were not being thrown out of the bar, but just being spoken to by door staff at the bar. In frustration at this and the fact she had been jumped, the victim launched a glass at a wall. Leslie Herbert reacted by picking up a glass from a nearby ledge and throwing it directly in the face of the victim, who was stood just a few feet away from her. She collapsed to the floor, and at this point, the two chavs collected their bags and left. As they left, Leslie was heard saying, "Jess didn't do anything. I am the reason her face looks like that." Jessica Winstanley and Leslie Herbert were arrested. They both answered no comment to all questions in interview. They both pleaded guilty to assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and Leslie Herbert also pleaded guilty to unlawful wounding. Jessica Winstanley was sentenced to 4 months detention, suspended for 2 years, and was also ordered to do 100 hours unpaid work and 10 rehabilitation activity requirement days. Leslie Herbert was sentenced to a year in prison, suspended for 2 years, and was ordered to do 150 hours unpaid work and 20 rehabilitation activity requirement days. Both women didn't do any time in jail. Follow the page and leave a comment on any other criminal cases you'd like to see on the channel.